Through some friends, I was allowed to basically just sit in the bleachers and observe with no guarantee of anything, and just to learn. So I started doing that, and again, the advice I was given to was to focus on a specific show so that I can have some kind of relationship that developed, and that show was Rhoda. I thought it would take maybe some months or whatever. I ended up doing this for close to 5 years, observing and learning as much as I could and just hanging on. There was a lot for me to learn because I knew nothing about the technical aspect. The first few days of rehearsal, it's a rehearsal of a play, and so I basically knew what was going on, but the most valuable part was seeing the transition from that to the cameras coming in, and then how that was adapted to turn into a television show. So basically that's what happened. I observed, and it was very hard because there was no assurance for year after year that anything was going to happen, and the longer I invested the time, the harder it was to walk away. But the longer I invested the time, the more kind of desperate it became. Will this work? And if it doesn't, what? During that time, I was directing plays wherever I could, and I was teaching. I taught at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts West when it opened, and just kept myself going. And finally, I was given an episode of Rhoda to direct, and that went very well, and that led to another couple of episodes, and then slowly it gained traction. Dave Davis was he was kind of in charge of all of the technical aspect, and he was one of the executive producers, and Alan Burns. And Valerie was very encouraging too, because I had directed her also in a play. She and Anthony Zerbe, we did a play at the Seattle Rep, and so we had developed some kind of relationship. And she saw me sitting there for 5 years, it was. I had gotten to talk to Dave Davis because he was the man I needed to talk about cameras and things like that. But I would imagine that it was a combination of the people who had seen me, the producers who'd seen me there all that time, and Grant Tinker was very supportive. Because during that time I was getting frustrated and in a little bit of despair, and I would write to him and say, well, maybe it's time for me to go, maybe this isn't. And he would say, no, hold on, just hold on, go see that person. So I don't really know specifically who it was who finally said, let's give this poor guy a break before he withers away. But they were all very kind, and I remember that night, the episode went very well, and it was written by a wonderful writer named Michael Leeson. And I remember the title, Rhoda Goes to Paris to Figure Out Her Life or something. And he told me later that it was a favorite script of his, and he wanted to save it for the time when I would direct. And that... These things, the kindness of people has been enormous. And that the first episode went very well, and at that night everybody was just celebratory with me.
How did you prepare for that first episode, and how long did you have to prep for it?
Well, I prepared for it for 5 years, basically. And once I got the episode, I talked with the camera coordinator. I tried to kind of visualize what it would be. I approached it as a play. How do I tell the story, and how do I rehearse it, and whatever. And then the next step was, how do I do the camera work? And I was still basically following the rules that I learned. And I had them pretty much in control, but I wasn't fluent enough yet to take liberties where you learn how to break the rules in order to make them work better. I was, it was, I did it, I started to work as a play. I rehearsed, prepared for it as I would a play, keeping in mind that eventually it is going to be shot and what that homework needed to be. And to do the homework, I spent a lot of time with the camera coordinator who was assisting me and was again very kind in his support during even the rehearsal period and so forth. I remember I went out and bought a whole new wardrobe for shooting night, and it was a very, very anxious time for me. Before the first reading, the table reading, I was a basket case. But something interesting, I mean, the phenomenon of it is that the minute we went on stage and I started to rehearse, I was at home. I knew, and that is what really lifted it. And yeah, I may not have been in full control of all of the technical aspects or whatever, but the people were carrying me. What I didn't know, it was provided for me, and what I did know, I did. So the preparation was, the challenge was to compress everything that I had been exposed to all this time to the work of that week, and to try not to confuse myself and just to approach the material. Okay, I know how to do this, and fortunately it worked out.